The athletes want to know three things. One, can I trust you? Two, can you make me better? Mm-hmm. And three, can you communicate with me? And so if you can answer those three questions in a powerful way, it doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if it's a professional athlete. It doesn't matter if it's an executive or an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter if it's somebody coming in from the street who's just wanting to get generally healthier.
Yeah.
Those three things are so crucial, and we can use the data that we're getting to help empower them by storytelling.
So you have a passion for fitness and the desire to start your own business, but launching a massively successful fitness business is extremely complex. The systems, operations, hiring, firing, coaching, sales, and marketing are critical to success. Where do you even start? This show will give you the answers. Here is Bedros Keuilian and Bryce Henson, your hosts of the Fitness Franchise Podcast, a show dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs launch and grow successful gyms.
Welcome back, my friend, to another incredible episode of the Fitness Franchise Podcast. And before I tee up today's guest, I want to give you a friendly reminder to give us a like and subscribe on YouTube and write us an amazing review on iTunes. That way we can keep producing this content for you for free. So now to introduce today's guest, who's a dear friend of mine, who's also former professional athlete with experience in the NCAA as well as the NHL. He's also a former strength and conditioning coach for, wait for it, the Miami University of Ohio, the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Edmonton Oilers, all in the NHL. And now he's the CEO of Own It. And today you're going to learn how to use data to drive client results, which will explode your referrals and your profits. Welcome to the show, my friend, Mr. Justin Roethlingshoefer. My man, Justin, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Bryce.
Dude, so pumped. Mutual friend Sharon introduced us. You have a ton of high-level experience in the NHL, which I want to unpack, and coming out from Miami, so I really appreciate you taking the time fitting in the schedule.
Well, you know what? It's not like I'm going to Buffalo, New York, or someplace that's freezing cold. So it's like an eye for an eye.
There you go. No, it all works out. So, yeah, man, it's a lot to unpack, and you're an athlete growing up and a strength and conditioning coach. You've been around the NHL for quite some time. So the first question I have, as our audience would love to know, is what's the backstory? How did you get to where you are today?
So it's unique. Growing up in Canada, like, hockey's what you do, and coming out of the womb, that was an expectation and something I think I just gravitated towards. And specifically when I was 13 years old, I'll never forget, I was playing with 16-year-olds. I always kind of stood out.
Which is a big difference when you're 13 from 16.
Big time.
Yeah,
big time. And I mean, I'm not a big guy now, so you can imagine I wasn't a big guy then either. But it was the first time I really didn't stand out and kind of blended in. And I said to my father, I said, like, what's going on? Like, what do I do? And he looked at me, and I'll never forget this. He said, son, talent will get you noticed, but consistency will get you paid. And that really kind of shaped the rest of my trajectory as both an athlete and as a career profession, because I started to dive in and I got obsessed with what does consistency mean? What does this mean for me in being able to dive into things on a day-to-day basis? And so that led to me wearing heart rate monitors to bed and pulse oximeters and brainwave monitors and understanding everything I put in my body from a nutritional standpoint and a sleep standpoint. And this is at a 13, 14-year-old kid. So as my friends are reading comic books, I'm reading medical journals just to try to get one more leg up to be the most consistent version of me. And so as that parlayed through my hockey career, came down to the US, played in college, had a cup of coffee as a professional athlete, and then dove into my educational career, getting my master's degree, going into my postgraduate work in heart rate variability, sleep recovery science, and then being able to apply it to professional athletes in that same realm and same space that I didn't get to as a player, but now being able to help and adjust as a coach.
Holy smokes, man. That's a lot to unpack right there. Like, what, did your dad have background in this? Like,
no.
Okay.
Not at all. He's, you know what, like, I love my dad. He's amazing, but he has always just been in like the tech side of things. And as he like, this guy, he's one of those, he's like a dad's dad, like a guy that shows up to everything. He's your coach at the youngest levels until like the real coaches take over.
Yeah.
And then he's the guy that like would pace during the entire game. Like he feels every nerve and everything that's going on. And so I think he just started to learn what was like, and he saw what was going on, and he just tried to educate as best that he could. And so little did he know the impact that that statement would have on me for the rest of my life. But his involvement and his presence in everything, I think, was just his ability to lean into that and the intuition that came to ultimately lead me down that path.
Good on you, man. That's awesome. Well, so let's continue the story and take you to the States. And I have in my notes here, you went to University of Louisville.
So I did my undergrad at Westfield University, Massachusetts. Okay. And then from there went to University of Louisville and was a graduate assistant, worked with women's basketball, soccer, baseballs, football. Had a lot of exposure to some really great work, and I was doing my master's degree in sports performance. Happened to just have an amazing mentor in Tina Murray. Tina is now the vice president of athlete health and wellness and basketball operations for the Sacramento Kings. Okay. And really, she was the first one really diving into what an integrated health monitoring system looked like. And what I mean by that is like taking your silos that typically exist from strength and conditioning, nutrition, athletic training, sport coach, administration, and bringing them into like a holistic model that was athlete empowering. And that was the first time that I was like, I was seeing this, and then taking my creative mind and my knowledge that I've garnered from 13 years old of data, heart rate monitoring, heart rate variability, sleep, brainwave monitoring, nutrition, and being able to now sink my teeth in to something really purposeful, something that was like, you're able to use the data for something. You're able to communicate in a different way. You're able to storytell in a different way. You're able to empower all of those people in a different way so that that end user, in this case, the athlete, can ultimately level themselves up and have actionable steps, not just more data that bogs them down. Mm-hmm. That was really the first place that I was really able to flourish and experiment and make mistakes and ask questions and really kind of lean into her leadership that allowed me to ultimately expand the thought process and creativity of how this could be parlayed into like the real world.
Yeah, holy smokes, that's an incredible experience. Now, kind of forward that through, then you that set the foundation for an extensive career in strength and conditioning coaches, or being a strength and conditioning coach, which, I think you've worked for Edmonton. You were here in our backyard here in the Ducks. Also worked with Columbus as well. So can you unpack a little bit about that experience, and then really also kind of shed some light on how your experience can really help someone who's starting a health coach practice, knowing that you're at an extremely different level, but bringing that down, if you will, to training the everyday person?
Yeah, it's a great question. So from Louisville, I went to Miami of Ohio, and that was my first opportunity to kind of run my own shop floor to ceiling. And setting it up, I was able to build my own weight room out, build my own sports science lab out, build my own team, really, from a performance team, and take what I had learned from Tina and start to put it into real everyday practical use. From there, started to get notoriety about like, hey, like what's going on? You're using data differently, you're doing it differently, you're applying it differently, your athletes are staying healthy, they're recovering faster. How is this happening? And so that's when I started to do some consulting work for the Capitals, for the Blue Jackets, and then obviously came over here with Mark Fitzgerald and the Anaheim Ducks, and working between there and San Diego. It was at that moment that you started to be able to understand that if you can, athletes want to know three things. One, can I trust you? Two, can you make me better? Mm-hmm. And three, can you communicate with me? And so if you can answer those three questions in a powerful way, it doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if it's a professional athlete. It doesn't matter if it's an executive or an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter if it's somebody coming in from the street who's just wanting to get generally healthier. Yeah. Those three things are so crucial, and we can use the data that we're getting to help empower them by storytelling, by laying it out there. Because at the end of the day, when you're talking about behavior change, and that's what all health and wellness is, that's what all fitness is, that's what all success really is. It's making sure that you're consistent in the behaviors that are going to empower you to get to where you want to go. But in order to create behavior change, you have to have the other person want to. And you have to get to that why. Like, why should I care about what you're telling me? Why should I care that my resting heart rate is 80 beats per minute? Why should I care that my heart rate variability is 14? Why should I care that my VO2 max is 20? Why should I care that I have a hard time walking upstairs? Like, why should I care about these things? And so when you can start to create story around it and start to come back to these habits that we talk about, from is it the alcohol you drink every night, or is it the inability to get the proper sleep at night? Is it the nutritional choices you're making? Is it the environment you're situating yourself in? Is it your lack of self-care and putting yourself first? That all of these things are now being hindered. Why should I care about those habits so that I can ultimately yield the results? Because everybody wants the results. Everyone wants that end piece, but nobody cares about the basis. And so if you can ultimately get them to understand by storytelling with that data, all of a sudden they connect the dots and they're like, oh, I get it. That makes sense.
So Justin, like, unpack that a bit, not from the storytelling perspective, because you're just so spot on, but the first thing you said is, like, you need to be able to develop trust, right?
Yeah.
Like any client, whether professional athlete or Joe Blow off the street, like, how are you able to do that?
So number one, I mean, is fess up to what you don't know. Like, don't think that you have to have all the answers. At the end of the day, there's been a lot of times where I'm looking at something, I'm like, man, I don't understand this. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Don't make something up, because all of a sudden, if I tell you something today and it's the complete opposite of what you should be doing, completely just lost credibility. What it does is it allows you to continue to dig deeper. I mean, at its core, I'm a researcher. I'm a creative guy that wants to know the answers. Going back to even my education, like, got my undergraduate degree, got a minor during that undergraduate degree, went and got every certification you could potentially get after that, went and got my massage therapy license, went and got my master's degree, went and did my postgraduate work. I always just want to know why. Like, everything I was learning, like, why? Why are you telling me this? It doesn't make sense that it can just be siloed. And all of a sudden we understand that everything from nutrition to mindset to actual physical fitness, kinesiology, your massage therapy, your self-care, all of these things are synergistically related. You can't work in them in independent silos and think that there's a magic pill that's going to fix everything. You have to be able to have this balance and this rhythm between all of these spaces. And so when you're looking at somebody or you're working with somebody, it's not, this is your answer, because all of a sudden, guess if I come to you, Bryce, and I say, Bryce, if you just have a salad for lunch every single day, you're going to get to where you want to get to. That's not true. Like, it's just not. It's a good step. And say, hey, maybe that's step one. Let's just get to this point and see where next step leads, and where step 2 leads, and where step 3 leads. Because, going back to what my dad said, consistency is what's going to get you paid at the end of the day. And so if we can yield this iterative process in building trust, and you don't go from 0 to 100 overnight. Right. It is that exact iterative process of making sure that your client is that you're able to give them something valuable every single day. You're able to, again, not make things up, but fess into it. It's like, hey, I don't understand why this isn't working for you. Let me dive in a little bit deeper. Is there a certain test that we have to run on you? Is there, do we have to sit down and have a deeper conversation? Is there something that you're not telling me, or something that I haven't asked you, so that you bring the information forward? The second thing is giving them time, leading into conversation, being specific about that. It's just like with a team, right? If you don't make specific time for your team members, how are they ever going to develop trust with you, or really build that relationship? And it's so cliche, but people don't care about what you know until they know how much you care. So true. It is true, but it's like, how do we get beyond that? Just like, okay, how do you tell somebody that you care about them? It's giving them time, it's being intentional, and ultimately making sure that you can show up to serve them. And if that is your authentic goal, and that is the authentic reason for your existing, is to show up for somebody else and to serve them, that will come through in all of those actions. Yeah, amen to that. And that's such a great point that you brought up. Like, health coaching, it's really about behavioral change at the core. And if you can get someone's trust, then obviously that opens the door. To unpack the second part of that, and I know you're known as the data guy, which is, for all the reverse engineering you do and the I guess, diligence you put into this, how do you connect the dots? Because usually I would say, when I think of a researcher, someone who's like really into data, that creative, like, storytelling component, there's a little bit of disconnect, but it seems like you've been able
to master that well? Was that a skill that you acquired? And I guess I'm really asking for the average, potentially fitness business owner or fitness coach who comes in and, okay, they can look at a data perspective, but how do you bridge that gap? How do you get good at storytelling so that way it makes more sense and connects with your client?
Great question. You have to do it for yourself first. Because if you can't storytell for yourself, you're living in your own body. Nobody knows you better than you. Mm-hmm. And if you can storytell for yourself, so you're sitting here, you're looking at your own data, you're looking at your heart rate curves, you're matching heart rate curves to the type of workout you've been doing, or you're matching sleep quality based off of the habits that you've engaged the previous day. You're able to start going, oh, this makes sense when I do this, and when I stop eating 3 hours before bed, when I enter into my night routine 2 hours before bed, when I eliminate blue light, I meditate before I go to bed, and I get 7.5 hours of sleep, all of a sudden my HRV pops, I'm more awake, I'm more alert, I have more energy. When I wake up and I expose myself to the sunshine first thing in the morning, I get my 8 ounces of water, I go and get some fresh air, and I move, I'm all of a sudden more productive throughout the rest of the day. And you can start to storytell that for you. And if you can't do it for yourself, you can't do it for anybody else because you're making it up. Mm-hmm. And when you're making it up, that's what drops credibility. That's what eliminates trust, because they're going to try something. You're like, that didn't work for me. Like, there's no way I could do everything you just talked about. I go back to the nutrition component all the time. And the reason I do this is because for so long, it's been meal prep for 6 hours on Sunday and just set your meals up for the week. Well, let's be honest, who has 6 hours to do that? Mm-hmm. And it's the framework that 5, 6, 7 years ago, that's what everybody was preaching, or like, here's the breakdown of your macros that you have to take. No, it's more than that. It comes up to habits that are sustainable for you. And if you can storytell for yourself, create this routine and rhythm for yourself, have data that backs it up and enhances it, now you're going to be able to educate your clients, educate those people you're working with, as long as there's data there, not putting them in and plugging them into your routine, but allowing to use the data and allowing that information to then enhance the story that you tell them so that they can now use it in some way that's sustainable and purposeful and intentional for them.
Love that. I mean, to your credit, you can tell you've done this for a long time and really good at it, but that's a good foundation, for viewers at home. Unpacking the box a little bit more, and I want to kind of, jump into own it here pretty soon. But what would you say, for a guy like you who has all this accreditation, a lot of experience, master's degrees, et cetera, in health and performance, but what would you say to like a young or new health coach just getting in the field, maybe doesn't have all that experience, but really needs to learn a little bit more about behavior change or creating trust, or really maybe some data metrics? Like, what would be some recommendations you have for start?
It's really unique. There's two things. Number one is run it on yourself first. Like, really use yourself as a blank canvas. Like, experiment with yourself. Be willing to make mistakes on yourself and look at the data, go, man, I don't understand that, and continue to reverse engineer what's going on. If you're looking at heart rate variability and you're like, why does my heart rate variability drop the day after back-to-back meetings? And I'm stressed, but I haven't really worked out. Well, we know that HRV is a measure of how our body's adapting to stress or strain, and our body doesn't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress. So all of a sudden, knowing this, you can start to say, wow, stress of me just sitting at my desk or sitting and doing my meetings or sitting in back-to-back training sessions and having all of this emotional and cognitive stress going on is just as impactful as having a hard lift or going for a 10-mile run. I have to know that to be able to then educate my client, who probably has a family, is a business owner, mm-hmm. is running 100 miles a minute, and so bringing it back to you. One, experiment on yourself. Experiment on yourself, use yourself as a blank canvas, and be able to story tell for yourself. So it's going to help you. It's going to help educate you and open your eyes to a lot of these things, to ask better questions of what you need to learn and what you need to understand at a better level. Because once we understand the science, then the art of coaching can really come in. And until you understand the science really well, having a creative, or I don't know if this is a word, but taking the artful side of it is really hard to do because you don't really fundamentally understand the science. So that's number one. Number two is look after yourself first. And a lot of people are like, what does that mean? You can't give of yourself if you don't refill yourself. And so whether that's giving yourself an hour break in the middle of the day, whether that is meditating a couple times throughout the day, whether that is making sure that your food is set up and that you're fueled throughout the day, whether that's giving yourself 15-minute time gaps between taking clients so that you can, again, clear yourself mentally and let yourself get filled back up. There's this meme out there of this guy who's handing a puzzle piece to another client. It could be anybody, right? Another person. And that puzzle piece completes that person. But you look at this guy or this woman, and they're half empty. Like they're just removing puzzle pieces like it's going out of style. And people are like, wow, like that's amazing that person would do that. That's so selfless. That's incredible. But actually, no, you look at it the other way. That's the most selfish thing you can do, because they're going to go on to the next person and they're getting 50% of that person. They're going to go to the next person, they're getting 40% of that person. Instead, and it goes back to when I was in Anaheim, somebody said to me, they looked me right in the eye and said, Justin, you're so talented, but you're not looking after yourself. And quite frankly, I would take somebody less talented than you at 100% of their capacity than you at 60%. And that really hit me.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, you're right. And so being able to fill yourself back up and be able to replace those puzzle pieces so that you could give somebody another puzzle piece and you can give somebody another one and give them and continue to give, continue to serve at a higher level, the only way to do it is to completely refill your own cup during and throughout every single day. So use yourself as a blank canvas, and 2, be able to look after yourself first.
Love it, dude. Before I flip to Own It, which I really want to spend a little bit of time here to extract a lot of info that will be valuable to our audience, I do want to kind of put a bow on the strength and conditioning experience that you've had, kind of like laying the foundation. And you probably already touched upon these, things, a few of these concepts already. But what are the biggest takeaways from your experience, like extensive experience of all the education, all the strength coaching experience, like at some of the biggest organizations in the name of the planet, that you can distill to like a new health coach coming through? What are some lessons and takeaways throughout that journey?
Yeah, so it's not about the sets and reps. It has nothing to do with sets and reps. It has all to do with lifestyle and consistency. And if we can eliminate the argument of, do we squat or do we deadlift? Do we lunge or do we do step-ups? Do we do push-ups or do we do bench press? Do we do inverted rows or do we do dumbbell rows? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. If the purpose is not to win a bench pressing competition, then it really doesn't matter. What matters is how the fundamental habits of consistency can all be brought together, and that's what needs to come back to it. How do we manage stress? How do we sleep? How do we eat? How do we hydrate? Are we consistent with our training? All of those things are what matters. And if we can truly create that relationship and that rapport with that end user, you're going to see results and client success and retention and all of those things that matter just exponentially grow.
Would you say, like in any part of your education, because that's so mind-blowing and so accurate from my experience, coaching not the high performance athletes in the world, but like everyday people, we call Mrs. Jones as well, but that is just so consistent and so spot on to like ultimately the clients get the best results from the ones who don't. Are there like some pieces of literature or educational pieces around behavioral change and around that aspect of the science, not necessarily the hard science, but actually more the behavioral change that's really kind of enlightened you and really lay the foundation for your success as a health coach?
So I think there's a couple studies that have come out. One looked at, and this is in like success of behavior change, right? So one was done probably 6 months ago, came out in January, I think, and it looked at somebody who utilized a wearable piece of technology with coaching, so with a human interaction, or somebody who used a piece of wearable technology, just taking information with no coaching. And the results were based off sleep quality, actual sustainable habit change. Those are the 2 things they looked at. The group that had coaching, so some level of communication, collaboration with a human, saw a 77% increase in sleep quality and a 65% increase in sustainable habit change versus those that didn't. And so right away, it talks about like why your job as a health coach, why this human element is so important. Yes, we all talk about how technology is scaling and that's the only way that you can scale, the only way that you can really create impact, but it's also not true. You can scale a person in terms of who you're reaching based upon how you structure your day, how you structure your team. And the unique part about this is, guess what? Technology cannot storytell. Technology cannot create context. The only ones that can do that are human beings. So for Mrs. Jones, she's looking at her piece of technology in the morning. She's got a terrible sleep. Her HRV is down. She's not motivated to do anything. And it's like, Mrs. Jones, you should just go to bed earlier tomorrow or tonight. Like, that's what you should do. And Mrs. Jones is going, you have no idea that I just got in a massive fight with my husband, that my kids are sick, and I have the biggest meeting of my life at noon today. Technology doesn't know that. It can't bring context to that, so it can't provide like purposeful, actionable solutions. It's people. And when you create that relationship with somebody to be able to help work them through that and provide strategies that are going to allow them to be successful, we go back to how you create trust. That is how you create trust. That is how you create impact. That's how you create life change. And all of a sudden, once that happens, guess what? Now they're going to listen to you when it comes to why, Mrs. Jones, is it important that we create a night routine? Why, Mrs. Jones, is it important that we pour back into yourself and not just focus on your kids as number one? Why is it important that we get into your workout on a regular basis? Why is it important that we get that hydration in over the course of time? And that is ultimately what creates that trust and that buy-in, because you're creating context and personalization to everything that's going on from a core of foundational habit change.
Oh my God, love that. What we teach our owners here at FitBody is like the difference of training and then coaching. And the training is like knowing the sets and reps and following that formula, but like the coaching element, which you articulated way better than I have. I mean, that is the secret sauce. So, and you backed it up by data, which I love, because you are the data guy after all. What's up, my friend? Bryce here. Now, you might know me as the co-host of this podcast and the CEO of FitBody. But what many people don't know is that I actually began my journey as a FitBody franchise owner. Now, being an owner, I wake up every day absolutely doing what I love. I live my passion. I help people transform their lives and have both financial and personal freedom. And it's for these reasons and many more that other owners join the brand and open their own FitBody locations too. So if you're looking to build a highly profitable business, take charge of your life, and create an impact in your very own community, then opening a FitBody gym might be a perfect fit for you. Now, to see if a territory is available in your area, as we have very limited spots due to our incredible growth, go ahead and visit our website at fbbcfranchise.com to complete an application. Well, thanks, and back to the show. So I want to shift gears here and talk about your brainchild, Own It. And if you could just kind of tee that up and give our audience a little bit insight to the great work that your organization is doing.
Yeah, so Own It has been a culmination of everything that I've kind of gone through. Like there's academia, there's experience, there's the private sector, there's high performance sport, and trying to look at it and go, you know what? Everybody's piecemealing things together. What would it be like if you had an actual performance team that was integrated, much like we talked about in Louisville with Tina, that was very purposeful and actionable? Like, what would that look like? And so with a lot of the teams that we started to build at the NCAA level, at the American League level, at the NHL level, and then what I started to put into place with the Hockey Summit in Florida, all of a sudden it was like, what if we actually started to do this for everybody? Like, what if we actually put this in place for all of us? And so Own It has now become a precision healthcare, so think healthcare in 2 words, system where we're all about like health optimization medicine, looking at everybody and each person from the inside out, using personalized data to now garner specific habit change based on 8 controllables and heart rate variability. So when anybody comes into our ethos, you're going to have 3 types of people working with you. You're going to have your integrated doctoral team, MDs, DOs, naturopaths. You're going to have an outer energy coach, which consists of somebody who's got a master's degree in a health-related field. They've got their RD as well as have done some functional medicine background. And then you're going to have an inner energy coach, which they've got a master's degree in a psychology-based field. And then they've gone through IPEC, which is a certification, kind of gold standard in the space of mindset coaching. Okay. And so when you integrate these 3 people together, you now are able to look very holistically at a human, mind, body, spirit, and integrate them together, because you can't have results if your mindset isn't right. You can't have results if your outer body isn't right. It all has to work synergistically. Inner and outer energy is what we call them, and that makes up the human being. And so when somebody comes in, we're going to look at gut biome testing, cellular nutritional dysfunction testing, hormonal paneling, DNA, epigenetic testing, cardiovascular paneling, hard plaque, soft plaque, and get a very holistic picture to how the body is functioning, either in a great way or in a negative way. And either or are not bad because it's just information. It just is. And then we're going to now track day to day and have the accountability piece as sleep quality and heart rate variability through a wearable device. And then you've got your coaching team that's going to help guide you through that.
Now, those 8 controllables, like, can you kind of unpack the onion a little bit? I'm curious, especially because I think they're very tangible and very important for, our audience, but for everyone.
So when you look at a lot of the 8 controllables came from my research and a lot of my work in my postgraduate work on heart rate variability and sleep. And so the 8 controllables that impact, think of them almost as levers that can be pulled to impact how your body's adapting to stress or strain. Because the first thing I want to say is heart rate variability is one of the most misunderstood metrics in the health space right now. It's a hot button topic. People are like, heart rate variability, yeah, I know it. If it's lower, it's not good. If it's higher, it's better. I mean, that's just fundamentally not true. HRV is a language. It's your body's language of communicating with you how it's adapting to stress and strain. That's all it is. So if your number's down, it's not good or bad, it just is. It's just your body saying, hey, Bryce, I'm not adapting to something really well. You now have to figure out what it is and figure out a action step to change the trend. And so if we know that, we can then take an action. But if we don't know what lever to pull, we don't know what action to take. So coming back to it, there's 8 levers that impact HRV. Exercise, sleep, nutrition, hydration, immune function, self-care, environment, and mindset. And so if we look at those 8 areas, we then have habits that are structured underneath one. So we talk about base level habits, right? So with nutrition, we want 3 meals a day. We want 2 pieces of fruit with a protein a day as a snack, and then 1 big salad with protein. And then no meals with portion sizes greater than 1 in protein, carbs, fats, or veggies. Simple baseline habits that you're just following. It's not keto diet, it's not paleo, it's not these complex measuring of things. It's just, let's get that habit solid. 3, 2, 1, 0 rule in nutrition. Hydration, half your body weight in ounces. I'm a 180 pound male. It means I need 90 ounces of water a day. Am I getting it or am I not? It's a yes or no answer. And so if I start to see, and so we've got all these habits listed as base level under these 8 controllables. And so if I go through this and I see that my HRV is trending downwards, and I go, you know what? I got my exercise in yesterday. I've got my nutrition on point. My sleep, I slept 7.5 hours. I got my night routine in. My environment is great. And I'm going through all these and I'm like, oh, you know what? It was back-to-back meetings all day yesterday. So I really didn't look after I didn't do my self-care work. Didn't give myself that avenue. So today, that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to look at my schedule. I'm going to add in 2 15-minute blocks to do some meditation or get outside and step out of the office and get some fresh air and come back in. All of a sudden, I make that change in this day. That's a positive. That's an action that you chose to do because of the information and data you were getting back. And now you look the next day, HRV starts to drive up again. Makes total sense. Storytelling, conviction, and ultimately now the buy-in process starts to occur. And so same thing, you start tracking HRV and you're having two glasses of wine every single night. And you're like, man, everything is like looking really good, but I don't know why I'm having these, my HRV average is so low. Well, now all of a sudden maybe you go, let's just not drink alcohol for, let's go 3 days, like just quit it. We start to see an upward trend. And then we put our 2 glasses of wine back in again, right back down to where we were. Oh my God, I can't believe what the data is telling me. Like, this makes so much sense. But you all day could tell me, hey, Justin, you probably should lay off the 2 glasses of wine every single night, and you're probably going to sleep better. You're going to drop the 10 pounds that you're trying to do because, not just because of the excess calories you're taking in, but because of the stress load that it's putting on your body, and it's keeping you in that sympathetic state, not allowing you to have that deep stage of recovery of sleep, not allowing your body to kind of just take the foot off the gas and say, hey, thank you for allowing me now to focus on some of the other stressors that I may be having. So it gives us a framework that people can understand and bring something actionable and tangible to the space that has really been confusing for a lot of people before.
Now, I don't want to discredit the 8 pillars, which is just so on point, but just dumbing this down for the new health coach coming through. Being that you're a high performance, health coach, what would be 1 or 2 things that would help a new coach, going in, working with a client, without all these metrics, but that would increase their, performance?
As human beings, there's 4 things that we can't live without: sleep, air, water, and food. Mm-hmm. If we don't get one of those 4 for extended periods of time, we die. Mm-hmm. That's just fact. If we are looking for true longevity, there's 3 things that all the study and all the research will show: a higher average heart rate variability, a higher average quality sleep time, and a steady blood glucose. So if we take those 3 metrics that we look at that are going to create longevity in somebody, and then we take those first 4 that humans cannot live without, let's just dumb it down to the simplest habits that we have to live in to create life within us. So if we can take a look at getting a hydrational habit going, outstanding. If we can get a nutritional habit going, super basic. It can be as simple as 3 meals a day. It can be as simple as portion sizing. It can be as simple as food order in which you're eating, because that's going to regulate blood glucose. Another study that comes out and shows if you eat vegetables, protein, fats, and then your carbs last, it actually regulates blood sugar at an 85% rate. So it's going to decrease your blood sugar spike after whatever meal you're eating. It's incredible. There was a study that came out that talked about when you have your vegetables first, protein second, fat third, and carbs last, regulates blood sugar. Same impact that it can have when you go for a 10-minute walk post-eating. And so these types of habits are things that you can start to implement or put into your clients' lives amongst those 4 containers. So a hydrational habit, a nutrition habit, a sleep habit, and then a breathing habit. And it could be, again, is your client sitting at a desk all day? Well, another study shows that you have like 35% of people that suffer from sleep apnea. You've got about 65% of people that suffer from what we call email apnea, where when you're sitting at a desk working, you actually stop breathing. What do we need to be clear mentally? You need oxygen to your brain.
Totally.
And so all of a sudden when we start breathing from the collarbone up, we're no longer creating true diaphragmatic breathing, getting the oxygen flow to our brain. And so, exactly, nice deep breath.
As I take a deep breath.
Exactly. We notice that we start holding our breath. We physically stop breathing when we're working. And so, is it that we're setting an alarm every 30 minutes to, hey, just breathe? Or is it that we set another habit that every time we send an email, we consciously take a deep breath and relax, and it's a diaphragmatic breath. So with teaching these things can all of a sudden come back to a massive change in your overall health and wellness, because those 4 things we cannot live without, and those 4 things, if we create change, will also touch on the 3 things that create longevity.
Dude, man, Justin, you are a freaking gold mine. This is awesome. Like knowledge bombs over there, friends. Pay attention. Man, you've been so gracious with your time. I still have another 10 minutes with you, but I want to transition to the lightning round if that works for you.
Yes.
Dude, you are clearly an intelligent and a very passionate guy, just seeing you light up. So from your perspective, Justin, what would you say is your biggest source of passion these days and why?
Impacting people. It's for a long time. I've gone through a lot of up and downs in my career, a lot of struggles personally, from just seeing like where I belonged and being different, and knowing that my high level of passion, my high level of energy, my OCD and ADD components were like, why am I going through all these things? And being able to take this journey and now impact people in a really creative way for, quite frankly, what's the best change in high performance, and high performance is only ever reached when health is optimized. Being able to lean into this and impact people that way I'm just so extremely passionate about it, and it fuels me every single morning.
Dude, love that. High performance is reached only when health is optimized. That is gold, my friends. Love that. Next up, what would you say is your zone of genius? Something that you're just factory installed that you're really talented and gifted to give to the world?
Creativity. Being able to see things that others can't. Making complex things simple. The body is an extremely complex thing.
Oh yeah.
There's 250 million cellular processes happening every second, and being able to simplify it down to habits that are actually going to create change, utilizing data, amazing metrics, amazing science that exists, and being able to make it actionable for people. I have an obsession about it. That obsession started at 13 years old. So 23 years later, it's now continuing to manifest in different ways. That's just really, I think, been my zone of genius, has just been this pure obsession of making complex things simple.
What is a unique value bomb that most health coaches should know before they enter the space, but for whatever reason, they probably don't?
To be honest with you, Bryce, it comes back to what I said, is put yourself first. Because I've seen so many coaches come into the space and they get burnt out because they have no boundaries. They open up their entire world to their clients and they become resentful. They lose the passion for the space. They lose the mission and reason that they entered into the space, which was to serve and impact people. And so if you keep yourself first, and I'm not saying you are selfish in terms of how you give and how you show up, but you lead with that intention to serve. And when you do that, you create boundaries that, hey, this is my time so that I can serve you better. And by doing that, you're going to be able to have a real long career, and you're going to be able to serve and impact people at a much higher level that will really allow you to be different in the space.
Next up, I'm going to ask you to be a little vulnerable here, because you look at you like really confident guy, in shape, a lot of knowledge. Your rap sheet, is just incredible. You look at the organizations that you've worked with, and also the education that you've received. What would you say is one of the lowest points, whether it be your life or your business career or even athletic career? And then the flip side, I want to hear our audience wants to know the proudest accomplishment.
There was a point in my life, about a 8-year process that was really hard. That was like a complete uphill battle for me, continuing to push that rock, and you weren't getting any further. And went through severe depression. Went through severe questions as to my value, my worth. Always trying to prove myself, and didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. Didn't feel like I had a home. And a lot of my obsessive compulsive nature in this space was to prove that I was worth something. As I went through that, I got divorced. I had no boundaries, continued to dive into my work, had no work-life balance. I know that's a crappy word because it really doesn't exist when you're kind of leaning in towards something, you're so passionate about it. But when it is not there because you're insecure with who you are, it's tough. And so when all of a sudden I went all in on this, and back in 2019, when I was fired from the NHL and the Ducks, it was something that it left me on the floor. Going I've given everything. I've been obsessed in this space for the last 20 years, and now I have nothing to show for it. I'm embarrassed that I was fired from something that I love and I'm so passionate about. And it was, at the end of the day, you look back and it was a differentiation of values, a differentiation of purpose and moral compass, and that's okay. And I would do the exact same thing over and over again. And at the time, everything happens for a reason, because I would not have been able to start on it. I would not have been able to lean into that zone of genius, and I would not have been able to get to that point. And so I'm heavily rooted in my faith, and I know that everything happens for a reason. It doesn't happen to us; it happens for us. This entire journey that I went through was ultimately so that I could learn everything that I could, and ultimately wait to be put on this stage of Own It and to be able to serve at that level with scale, and would not have been able to do that without that really hard journey that I went on.
Good on you, man. I appreciate you being vulnerable, open up the kimono a bit, but it's powerful. Now, on the flip side, what's your biggest highlight and biggest proudest moment?
I think, to be honest with you, the growth that we've been able to see within Own It, the impact that we've been able to have, the team that we've been able to build, and ultimately doing it with my best friend, with my wife. So it's been a lot of fun, and something that is like I said, I'm blessed every day to be doing what we do.
Heck yeah, and Lisa's here in the backdrop, so I want to give her a little shout out as well. Love that. Last few questions for you, Justin. You are in the business and have been for a long time of giving incredible advice to your coaching clients. What would you say is one of the best pieces of advice you have received, and why?
To be honest, it goes back to my dad.
I just thought of that too, man. That's sage advice right there. I'm taking that with me.
It goes back to my dad, and it's like, talent gets you noticed, but consistency gets you paid. And payment can be whatever you want. It could be that scholarship, it can be that job, it can be that girl, it can be that that new pair of shoes you want, it could be that new fitness routine you want to start. Whatever it is, it's consistency that gets you there. And something else that we talk about all the time is competence creates confidence. Confidence ultimately breeds consistency, and consistency creates change. And so if we can stay in that consistent mode, and just that is what we're striving for, stay in the journey, understand that the pursuit of whatever you're going after is the real thing that everybody thinks. They think it's the end result of where they get to, that like, that's what I want, but no, it's the pursuit, man. It's the pursuit of getting to where you're at. And the more consistent you can be with that, the more in love with that process that you can fall, the more successful you're going to be.
Dude, man, love that so much. That fires me up. Kindred spirits, my friend. All right, last couple questions. Specific behavior change and habit formation. What's been a really beneficial habit, or even a game-changing habit, that you've acquired that's really helped you with your success in your life?
So for me, has been the focus on sleep. I mean, at the end of the day, I was always a guy that I talked about over the course of that time, where in my career, where I would be watching data all night during games, during live feeds, talking to our coaches, getting them changed. Then all of a sudden taking all of that data that we had, then comparing it back to video throughout the night, finishing up my reports around 3, 4 in the morning, only to be back at the rink by like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning to get ready for practice or pregame skate or whatever it was. And that was like my routine. And just going off of sheer like fumes, and just pushing through and thinking that I was grinding, right? Like I was doing things the right way.
Yeah.
But as soon as you look back on it, like truly operating at like 50%.
It's like you were the person in the puzzle.
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And so for me, and Elise had a lot to do with this and kind of reshaping my mindset on this, but sleep was the number one thing, and getting a consistent sleep time and a consistent wake time. Consistency for me now is about 10 o'clock and 5:30. And if you're able to truly like dive into that and lean into that, you're so much more productive, and you're so much more of who you are. Mm-hmm. and that's the beauty. So that's the number one thing, is for me, has been my sleep habit.
Next up, leaders are readers, and granted, you've done a lot of reading in your day with all that education.
We're not going to give you a study book or like research journal. We're going to get a little bit more creative than that.
So I appreciate it, but in all seriousness, what's been a big, impactful book that you can share with our audience that's been beneficial in your life? Yeah,
so I had to look up the author's name before this, but it's Two Chairs by Bob Beaudine, and it's really about anytime you're making a decision, always think about keeping an empty chair available. One, for God, and making sure that you're leading with the intention of faith there, and then knowing that there's somebody else who's meant to be at your table. There's somebody else who's meant to be here, and who is that? And that's the quest that you're on.
That's gonna make me think. Love that. All right, my friend, last question for you. Our audience, you've delivered a ton of value in this particular space. And shoot, I'm going to go ahead and watch this again to dissect some nuggets. From our audience who are interested in business and fitness and entrepreneurship and really launching their own health, and fitness business, what would you say is a good parting piece of wisdom that will help them on their journey?
Again, no matter, I go back to what we said to you is, and I said it a couple times during this, is if you truly want to reach the pinnacle of high performance, your health has to be optimized. Health has to be the foundation. Our bodies can only adapt to the levels in which we are constrained. And if that limiting factor is your health, you will never reach that ultimate potential of high performance that is there. So making sure that you, even before you enter into your entrepreneurial journey, even if you're mid-entrepreneurial journey, that you have yourself and your routines locked and dialed in place, because once you're in it, it is going to be an uphill battle the entire way, because business will take everything from you, family will take everything from you, yourself will take everything from you, and you have to be able to understand how to navigate this balance of overreaching and stress and regeneration. And if you can facilitate that and get into that routine and rhythm prior to everything else kind of pulling you out and kind of stepping into some uncharted waters, it is going to take you so much further and allow you the capacity to handle everything you're about to go on.
Well said, my friend. Dude, that was awesome. Before we wrap today, we'd love to have our audience continue to stay in touch with you. So a website or social media handle, where can they connect with you at?
Yeah, so super active on Instagram. It's Justin Roth. So Justin and Roeth. And then our website is ownitcoaching.com.
Just before we wrap today, man, I just want to acknowledge you and appreciate you being on the show. I know we've had this in the books for a while, and man, did it deliver. Man, one of the things in the short time we got to know each other, like your energy, your passion, and the biggest thing is your obsessiveness to be the best version of yourself and to pass that along for your clients. Like, I feel that. Audience, I hope you feel that too, and I want to acknowledge you for that. So,
Bryce, I appreciate you. It's been, it's just a blessing to have people like you who create space for the audience members to have content like this that can be shared and really empower them to make changes. Because, like we said, if you're not empowering people to make the change, it's just going to fall on deaf ears, and it's really all about serving other people. So I appreciate you and honor you for that.
Amen. I appreciate that. Well, my friends, I know you got a ton of value today. Assuming that you did, go ahead and give us a like and subscribe on YouTube and write us an awesome review on iTunes. That way we can keep producing this content for you for free. Justin, my man, appreciate you, my brother.
Appreciate you.
And we'll see you in the next episode, my friends.